All right. So, as we're recording this, we have the AFC and the NFC championship games
That is right.
this weekend. We haven't talked a lot of football, so I'm very curious. I'm going to give you the matchups just for those people out there that don't know what's going on in NFL land. Just a quick thing. I didn't realize that the National Football League viewership is about 10% of English Premier League. Did you know that? I had no idea.
Wow, I didn't know that either. That's a fun
I had
fact.
to look. We had an argument yesterday while we were talking at the bar watching Arsenal play, and we're like looking it up and like, oh my God, it's actually 10%. But besides that point, we have AFC Bills versus Buffalo Bills versus Kansas City Chiefs.
Yep.
In the NFC, we have your favorite team, the Philadelphia Eagles, against the Washington Commanders.
Amazing.
What say you? I would like your predictions, and then I would like a Super Bowl prediction, please.
Okay, so both of my predictions are also my wishes, right? So they're also what I want to happen. Okay. Bills over Chiefs.
Okay. I think and the rest of the world.
Right, exactly. It's Josh Allen's time. It's Josh Allen's time. I love Josh Allen so much, and it's his time. They're going to get over the hump here. They're going to finally beat the Chiefs. And then I think Commanders over the Eagles. And that is, I think the Commanders have had a Cinderella season for sure. By the way, it's the Commanders are really the Cowboys light. I mean, they have so many ex-Cowboys on that team, and so, but so not that I'm bitter about it or anything. But
I like that. Yeah. So you got Bills, Commanders.
Yep.
Who's winning in the Super Bowl on February 7th?
The Bills. Yeah.
You think the Bills are winning?
Yeah. The Bills are just unstoppable right now. Yeah.
So what's funny is you and I mean, I guess we normally agree, but not necessarily on football. I have the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I'm picking Bills over the Chiefs. But I'm only picking the Bills because I want the Bills to win. I don't know how the NFL allows the Kansas City Chiefs to lose.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Have you seen the memes going around,
which is basically the Bills versus the refs?
As much as people want to
memes going around,
right? I know. As much as people in Kansas City want to believe, and Pat Mahomes, wants to believe that there's nothing going on. There's something going on.
There's something going on.
All you have to do is watch how Jared Goff got clocked in that game against the Commanders, and nothing was thrown.
That's right.
And literally, that same play happens to Pat Mahomes, and somebody's put in jail. There's no doubt about it.
That is exactly right.
But here's I do think the Chiefs might win, whatever. I like your Commanders pick. I love Daniels as the quarterback. But I think that if I'm really looking non-biasedly, I really think that the Commanders are going to win because I have this horrible feeling in my gut that Josh Allen is Jim Kelly.
Okay. All right.
And does it and just simply, how we always said, it's Jim Kelly's time. Jim Kelly. It was Jim Kelly's time for like 6 years.
Well, yes. Against my Cowboys. Yes.
It never happened. Yeah. So I guess we are in agreement that we'd like to see Philadelphia lose.
Although
I did see Jalen Hurts smile the other day, and I didn't know what to do with that.
He did very hard. It's very hard.
Just remember, everybody has your story to tell. Tell it well. Let this old marketing move.
And now, for your listening pleasure, here's Pulizzi and Rose, covering the week of media, marketing, and digital content news. This Old Marketing. Take it away, boys.
Well, hello, friends. Welcome to This Old Marketing, proudly brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, the audio destination for who? You're all business professionals, right? And I'm Robert Rose, and welcome to episode number 464 for Friday, January 24th, 2025. I'm back. We're back. I'm just back from a vacation in the Gulf of America. That's right. And with me, as usual, is my pal, my colleague, and a guy who will lead the ground invasion of Greenland, Mr. Joe Pulizzi.
I'm sorry. You got me with the Gulf of America thing.
Yeah. Right.
Is that for sure? Did that go through?
Yes, it's an executive order. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. It's not like anybody has to, the only people that have to recognize it are people in the executive branch. So everybody else can go, okay, all right, okay then. Okay.
What was the other one? Mount Denali is
Yeah,
going
but
back to
Denali
McKinley.
going back to McKinley, Mount McKinley. Yeah.
I actually thought that was a smooth move to call it Denali, to go back and say that's what the original name was.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
before McKinley, before like, we ruined a lot of people's lives by taking over
Well,
North
there's
America.
all of that. Yeah.
But yeah, so anyways, it's we were talking before the show. It feels like we haven't talked in so long.
It's been a hot minute for sure. Yeah, and we've then
Lots
boy,
of
has a lot gone on since we've last been to get together. I mean, we have a new president.
Yeah.
All right, moving on.
And nothing's happening in that area.
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing is
nothing. It's all going to be fine. I see the meme of us, the little dog sitting in the fire, going, "It's fine. It's fine.
Everything's fine." Yeah.
Outside. And speaking of fires, yeah, we had the reason we had the little, we pre-recorded last week's show, of course. But even with that, it probably wouldn't have been able to record anyway, because I got evacuated, and it was an interesting week, I gotta say.
Yeah, I know we gave a little update to the audio listeners last week, but did you want to just give? I know you're going to talk about it later in the show.
I'm going to rant and rave about media and marketing and bring it together with one of my experience, certainly. But yeah, I mean, everybody's good in my neighborhood and in my
how close. Yeah, give people an idea. We have a lot of international listeners.
Sure,
give people an idea of where you are compared to the Palisades fire and the other fires that are going on, just so people get an idea.
So if you look at the map of the Palisades fire, I live just north of where it stopped on the north side, right? So and so just to the northwest of that. It's a little weird because California is at an angle, so it's not pure northwest. It would actually be a little more west than that. But just you can think of it as up and to the left, basically, if you look at a map in the way that they usually. And then sort of above me, very close, was what was called the Kenneth Fire. That was a small, in comparison, fire that broke out, and that was the one that made us evacuate. And then the Hearst fire, which is basically the Pasadena, Altadena fire, was mostly up in the mountains, but it's all the way on the other side of the valley from me. So it's, probably 50 miles as the crow flies. Okay. And it's basically up in the mountains there, but right at the beginning. So that's why all those communities got hit.
So you were evacuated briefly.
Correct. We got evacuated on Thursday. I forget the date now. They're all running together, but with that, not last Thursday, the Thursday before, we were evacuated for about 4 hours because of the Kenneth fire, which was the burning. I could throw a rock and hit it. In fact, I walked up when it started going. I walked up to the end of my street, which basically borders, I've talked about it before, a pretty big state park. And I could see it. I could see the fire and the helicopters dropping water on it. And It's amazing. I mean, the firefighters are, I mean, if it weren't so tragic, I just got to tell you, watching those helicopters fly over your house at 150 feet off the turf. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, it's so cool. It's so cool. But it's obviously for the most tragic of reasons, but man, those first responders are just unbelievably heroic. I mean, it's the coolest thing.
I read, and I don't know how true this is or if it even matters, but they were talking about how outside of the environmental issues that are and the winds and all that stuff that's happening with how these fires are being spread, they talked about the excess of plastic in the materials that's making things burn quicker and spread quicker, just plastics in our tables and chairs and things like that, more than it's been in the past. And I was like, I didn't know what to do with that. I just thought it was interesting.
No, it's interesting. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion around something that's called passive architecture. And because if you look at the house, this is especially true in the Palisades fire. There's a lot of newer houses that are built with this idea called passive architecture, which basically is a very expensive way of, the materials that they use and the way that they do venting on the houses. It's all based for environmental purposes, right? To have air quality and sunlight and, power conservation and all that kind of stuff. It's a very expensive and very new way of doing houses. And those were all the houses that are still standing. I mean, you'll see a house, and there's a couple that are on the coast of Malibu and a couple that are in Palisades that are just, they're in the middle of, what looks like a bomb went off, and they're still standing, and they're perfect because
unbelievable
architecture. Yeah. It's
so crazy.
It's crazy, and it's an older neighborhood with sort of houses from the 60s and 70s and 80s. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of expensive homes, but there was a lot of just normal mid-income sort of family homes in there as well. And it's just, locals here have known for years that area was, the word due is not the right word, but, basically it's due. Because it hadn't burned in many, 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 many years. And so it's for locals, it's not surprising. It's obviously tragic and horrible, but it wasn't something that, it wasn't something that was like unheard of, right? So it's, that parts of Malibu to the west, basically, it burns, literally there was a fire, 3 months ago or something like that in parts of Malibu that basically are now part of that burn scar because it's now they met up. And so that's why the fire stopped there. So anyway, it's I'll get into this later, but basically the really unfortunate part was local media covered this in such a heroic and wonderful way. And the national media just really fell down, just really was awful. I mean, I was getting texts and emails and so many wonderful people, all of you, reaching out to me over text message and over DMs and stuff to check on how we were doing. But it was because the national news that you were seeing was just so wrong and so clickbaity. But I'll get into that later.
Well, we're glad that you are okay. And what I thought was interesting take from Scott Galloway, they were talking about it a little bit on the Prof G show. And he said, yes, the loss of property is horrific. I mean, but we don't want to downplay that. But let's focus on the fact that so few people have lost their lives.
Yeah.
Like there are a lot of heroic, amazing people saved a lot of people's lives.
100%. Absolutely.
And that I think that I wish we would be focusing more on that, on the stuff that was saved versus.
Well, yeah, not only
always
that,
pointing the finger.
Yeah. Well, I'll get into a little bit of that.
You could, but you could talk about that later. That's more your domain to talk about. But no, I'm excited to get into a news show.
We're going to get back to a new show.
What are we going to talk about?
We have an amazing show because we're going to talk about this. So we can't get out of here without talking about the TikTok ban and getting an update on the TikTok ban. Because I know you've got a take on it. I've got a take on it. And now it's still going on, folks. I mean, there's still news being made. China's walked back their statement about how they wouldn't be willing to sell it. And now maybe they will. We'll also talk about the rise of Red Note as an alternative to TikTok. And then we'll get into sort of the reaction to all of this. Instagram now throwing big bucks at creators. We'll talk about what's going on with Meta and how they're trying to attract people into Instagram. And the fact that Facebook, and again, this is a little bit of old news, but it's got new news to it, Facebook ending fact checking and what that means for marketers and content creators. And interestingly, because news that just broke yesterday, they just said that community notes, basically their replacement for fact checking, won't apply to paid media. So across those platforms, interesting idea. And then we'll get to our winners and losers, where I'm going to sort of talk about my winner, which will be Edelman and their Trust Barometer. Joe will talk a little bit about Andrew Ross Sorkin and the future of media. And then when we get to Rants and Raves, I will talk more about the fires and my experience with both marketing and media. And boy, do I have some doozies there. And Joe's commentary will be about a Wall Street Journal interview with the Anthropic CEO on the future of Gen AI. So a chock-a-block show.
It's going to be amazing.
I don't know how we're going to, I don't know
how we're going to keep it to an hour.
We won't. We won't. just spoiler alert. We're won't.
Already, I mean, we start every episode already overtime.
That's right.
How does that happen?
That's right.
We just, neither of us can keep quiet about it.
Maybe we should just do more episodes. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, we'd have to do more special. I mean, I guess it's possible. But even if we said we could do more shorter episodes, but they would be an hour. They would
still end up an hour. Yeah.
Have you and I ever talked on the phone? It's been less than an hour. It's like never, it just doesn't happen.
Absolutely the truth.
Stuff. It's just like it's like one idiotic thought after another, and they build on, and then it starts to make sense after a while.
That's exactly right.
It's like, I believe what you're saying.
That is exactly right. All right, let's get to our first story here, and it's all about the TikTok ban. Basically, the world had a toxic freakout on Sunday because, of course, TikTok shut itself off. We'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But the article that we'll cover here comes from USA Today, although just about any mainstream media publication has some form of this article. And the headline being, TikTok still not available, by the way, on the App Store or the Google Play Store after the Trump executive order basically stayed the execution, if you will, of TikTok and the TikTok availability. The article opens up by saying longtime TikTok users have resumed using the popular social media app following a brief shutdown on Sunday, but it still remains unavailable for those new users to download. Users who already had the app can jump back on the short-form video platform following a brief period of when TikTok went dark. But as of Wednesday morning, that's just 2 days ago as we go to air here, TikTok could still not be downloaded from the Apple and Google app stores in the United States, even after the newly elected president and inaugurated president Donald Trump signed an executive order to delay enforcement of the ban. The ban, which was due to go into effect on Sunday, stems from a law that requires TikTok's Chinese parent company ByteDance to sell its U.S. assets in order to continue operating in the United States. While the law only mandated that ByteDance remove TikTok from the app stores in the U.S. if it failed to meet the sales deadline, company executives made the decision to shut down the app entirely. Was that a bunch of stupid political theater? But yes. So give me your overall take here of what's going on and what you think, because we haven't talked. You and I haven't talked since
we haven't talked about it. First of all, I got to tell you, I got a couple notes from people that said, "Well, when does Apple take over Disney?" Because you're right about this prediction, which I never thought. I didn't think it was going to happen, because even though I
people don't encourage him,
I talked about it 4 years ago that this was going to happen.
Yeah,
and it happened. But honestly, I thought that your take on Facebook 2 days ago or whatever, like when it went down, was brilliant. That you just talked about it being theater, and you were absolutely correct. I mean, I was at we were at a bunch of volleyball matches this weekend because we were watching my niece play volleyball. And I was really interested. She's a big TikTok user, and I was like, "Well, what do you think?" She was very depressed about this whole thing happening. And then the next day, of course, we see in real time, "Hey, sorry, because of the law that went through in the United States, TikTok is not available anymore. But hopefully, President Trump will come through." And was it even 12 hours later? Whatever it was, 12 hours later, we got the same thing that says, "Thank you, President Trump, because you're pushing." Nothing happened. He wasn't even president. He wasn't even president yet.
That's right.
And so I'm like, this is stupid. What is this, marketing? And then you had a really good. Why don't you just talk about your post and what you were trying, which was dead on.
Sure. Well, basically, what I said was that this was all theater, right? So basically, when Biden came out and said he wasn't going to enforce it in the one day that was there. So, and of course that went unreported and uncared about, right? Because it was obviously Trump's first move that was important here, what he would do. And when he basically came out and said, "Yeah, I'm going to issue an executive order to save it," and he spoke very glowingly of TikTok in his talk. Basically, on Sunday, the app shut down. They shut down proactively, right? Which they didn't have to do, right? Let's be really clear here. No one ever has said that TikTok has to do anything. TikTok doesn't have TikTok by this law.
I think a lot of people don't know
anything.
It's a great point. People don't understand this. So the onus of the law is on the service providers.
That's right.
Correct?
On Apple and Google and Verizon and AT&T and everybody that provides access to that ban. That's where the penalties are, and that's where the access of the law goes. TikTok has to do nothing. They're not required to do anything. But and they're basically, this is not a political statement, but they are playing the Trump administration like a drum. And they basically said, "Oh, we're going to shut down in all deference to the new president because of the law, and we want to make sure that we're in compliance and all of that." And and lots of jazz hands and very faint voices saying, "Oh, please, sir, may I have another?" And basically, they did that so that when Trump swoops in and issues his executive order, they go, "Thank you, President Trump." And they literally said, which was just, by the way, it was very interesting to me. They changed the messaging. I was trying to get on Sunday just to see what was going on. And I took a screenshot of where it basically said, "Sorry, it's not available right now. We're hoping that things go better." Then they changed it to, "Thank you, President Trump, for coming back." And then they changed it again to thank you, you're back online. And then they changed it back again to, "Thanks to President Trump's efforts, we're now back." So they were clearly trying to figure out the right messaging here to balance all of this. But that's all theater for them to get this stay. And the interesting thing to me now is, first of all, the quietness of Apple, Google. Like Apple and Google haven't really said anything except basically, they're taking the thing out. They, because by the way, it's still the law. There's no Trump's executive order does nothing to the law. It's not like he's unbanned it forever. He's only given it a
75% waiting period.
That's right. It's a 75-day basically extension for them to find a sales partner before enforcement. But here's the thing: he never has to enforce it. He's not required to enforce it. The law clearly states that it's up to him, basically the executive branch of government and the Justice Department, whether or not they want to enforce it. But the key is like, are you going to bet? Like, if you're Google or Apple or Verizon or AT&T, are you going to take that chance, right? Of basically going, "Oh, of course I'll take him at his word that he's never going to enforce it." No, of course. That's why you haven't seen them put it back in the store yet, because at any time, it's his 75 days only basically an extension for them to get a sale. But at any time, they could come back and go, "You're in violation of the law. Therefore, you owe, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in penalties." So this is only going to get more dramatic as we go into, ostensibly early March, which is when this is going to start to come to a head.
I think it's important just to summarize a little bit that TikTok was never truly banned. TikTok pulled itself down, put some notes on, 12 hours later, put itself back up. It said, "Oh my God, things were happening," when nothing really happened. They just sort of said that. But what has been true and what is currently true, and I just checked before the show, if you go and you try to download the TikTok app, you can't do it on Apple. And apparently you can't do it on Google either.
Yeah, you can't do it on Google.
And they have a note at the top that says, right now, you cannot, the Chinese-based app TikTok cannot be downloaded at this time.
That's right.
So
the interesting thing here is that it would not surprise me as we get further into this, if clarity doesn't come soon, to see the Verizons and AT&Ts and sort of other internet providers start to go, "You know what? We need to be ready here," right? I guarantee you those plans are in place. Like they're figuring out ways that they're going to block, the IP. They're going to block the ability to use the mobile app and the website and all that kind of stuff, which, as we talked about on the show, is no small thing, right? It's no small thing to block, a website sort of full scope against just the country. It's not impossible, but it's not a small job either. So they have to do some work here to make this work. And this is, we'll see what happens. The thing that I'm fascinated by so much is that China, the news this week, China was basically going, "Oh, no, we're not selling. What are you kidding? We're not selling." They basically called the bluff. They basically called the U.S. government's bluff and went, "Fine, do what you're going to do, right? Because we're not selling you the company." And then Trump said basically he wants 50% ownership for the U.S. government. He wants to basically socialize. It's socialism, folks. He wants to socialize TikTok to be a government entity and have the U.S. government own 50% of it, which I find comical and ironic and so many other things. But beyond that, now China has sort of walked back that statement and went, well, private companies going to be private companies and they can go do what they want to do. And so TikTok, I'm sure, went to Chinese government and went, "Hey, listen, we need to, we're gonna do something here, and so we need you on our side on." Well,
this. What's interesting about all that, besides what Trump did, China did come back, and the spokespeople did say, "Hey, TikTok can really do what they need to do."
Yeah,
exactly. Saying don't sell. So what I want to get your take on is, okay, we have 70 days left on this extension. That doesn't, to your point, doesn't really mean anything,
right?
Who will there be a purchase or a sale, and who do you think is the most likely company?
Right. And the other thing we have to keep remembering, this is getting so messed up from the TikTokers who are out there talking about this and from even the mainstream media, it's not TikTok selling the entire company, which is totally misreported in most of the news. They're basically saying TikTok has to sell itself. No, it doesn't. It has to sell its U.S. operation. Basically, it has to divest itself of its U.S. operation to someone. And whether or not the algorithm comes with that divestiture is totally up to TikTok. So the question isn't how much is TikTok worth. The question is how much is just the U.S. audience of TikTok worth. And that's where this becomes a really interesting content marketing and media challenge, because what you're buying is the U.S. audience and basically the brand, right, of some kind, right, whether it's called TikTokUS.com or Schmickmock or whatever. I think it does. I think they do figure out a deal. God, I hope it's not Musk. I mean, but it very well could be. I could see him doing it. I've heard that there are a number of investment groups still trying to roll it up. There was a rumor that what's his name, Mark Cuban wanted to, and Mark Cuban's not going to do it.
Mark Cuban's not going to be.
No, he's not.
I'll tell you. So my bet, if I was betting right now, I would put it on Meta. Would be your purchaser.
Meta could be, and which a lot of people have speculated. There's a lot of speculation around Meta coming in and buying it, which would, in any normal situation would throw up all sorts of FTC
but not in this administration.
But not in this administration, no.
Well, okay, let's just
and that would perfectly explain why Zuckerberg has been doing literally backflips and bending the knee over the last 8 weeks to Trump.
There was a meeting among Zuckerberg and the heads over at Meta that said, let's make this happen. We can do this. We'll pass FTC scrutiny because it's not Apple and it's not Google. So they're going to, even though we may own social advertising, we can make the broader case that it's not those two behemoths. It's us. We're a little bit smaller. So they're going to make that case, and his crazy behavior on the Rogan show and all the stupid stuff and the things he's doing at the inauguration and things, it makes perfect sense. And by the way, a lot of people didn't report on this. Facebook just started a TikTok account. Just
That's
happened.
Right. Yes.
So
and here's the other thing. Remember, they don't have to use the technology.
That's right.
They could literally just basically what they would be doing is paying a lot of money for TikTok to shut down in the US and basically go, oh, you wanted to be on TikTok now in the US? Come on over to Reels, basically.
Well, I don't think they would do. I think they would absolutely have.
Oh, they'd have a separate brand. They would
you'd
call
have
it a
Facebook,
separate brand.
Instagram, TikTok US.
But they don't need the technology is my point. Basically, they're buying the account. What they're doing is they're buying the accounts of the creators and the audience.
Which is worth something. Which is absolutely.
Yeah. So. But here's but then you go, okay, this gets so fun to think about this. So then you go, if they do that, if they buy the US, let's say they buy the US version of TikTok, right? And all the accounts and all the things, it's all now US operations within Meta's infrastructure.
Sure.
Now, if I'm a TikTok creator and I create content, does the world see it? Does TikTok world, in other words, do people in China and France and Canada and all, do they see it, or do they only see the US version, right? Is it only restricted to US?
I don't know.
Because then what have we done? Because I don't know what have we actually accomplished?
I don't know if that's a challenging deal. I think it's more like a franchise setup type of thing where you're
franchise.
Okay, this is your territory.
You're getting a McDonald's.
This is it. Yeah, this is your Shamrock Shake.
Yeah,
it's not the same as Ireland's Shamrock Shake. It tastes a little bit more American.
Yeah.
But anyways,
headquartered in the Gulf of America. Yeah.
Yeah, what does Greenland see?
Oh man,
that's my question.
Yeah.
Anyways, maybe.
All right, we should probably pay some bills here.
Let's do that now.
Do you feel like your leads never lead anywhere, and you're making content that no one sees, and it takes forever to build a campaign? Well, that's why we built HubSpot. It's an AI-powered customer platform that builds campaigns for you, tells you which leads are worth knowing, and makes writing blogs, creating videos, and posting on social a breeze. So now, it's easier than ever to be a marketer. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
Can I be direct for a moment? Direct about a podcast? That's the DTC Pod. The DTC Pod, hosted by Ramon Barrios and Blaine Bolus, it's brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network. And it's about all things direct-to-consumer. Ramon and Blaine cover everything from starting, growing, and optimizing e-commerce direct-to-consumer brands. They talk with founders, marketers, platforms, creators, and marketing and growth agencies to cover all kinds of topics like brand building, social media, influencer marketing, website conversion, paid media, Facebook ads, consumer trends, email marketing, and if you can believe it, more. That's right. Find DTC Pod wherever you follow your favorite podcast.
Have you ever been to a volleyball tournament?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So I went. This is the second year in a row I've been to this volleyball tournament, and there were 25 volleyball matches going on simultaneously.
Wow.
In the Raleigh Convention Center.
Okay.
And I've never heard so many whistles in all my life. And I'm having like PTSD whistles. I'm hearing whistles everywhere because there's so many whistles. It's like nonstop. I actually had to count. I said, okay, for 60 seconds, how many whistles? So I had my watch out and I looked. 45 whistle blows in 60 seconds.
That's amazing.
Just a lot of whistles.
And
by the way, you got to pay
whole
attention.
Lot of whistles.
You got to pay attention because you're going to get hit by a volleyball. They're all direction, especially when they're out warming up, when everybody's serving or what. Like, you got to be careful. You can hurt yourself. It is not.
Sure. Are they playing really close to each other too?
They're I guess courts are probably 15 to 20 feet away from each other.
Okay.
So yeah,
they're not. There's nobody's throwing balls.
There's nets. There's nets that are just there to look nice,
right?
Because everything seems to go over the nets, and so there's a lot of stoppage because the ball got away and whatever. But
yeah,
it was fat. It was.
Did you have somebody there that you were watching, or did you?
Yeah, my niece. My niece was
okay.
Was
fantastic.
Yes.
And did your niece do well?
Yes, they did well. They ended up going 5-3. Everybody was super excited, and I'm assuming we're going to be back again some other time. No, she's a sweetheart.
some other time.
It's just, Okay. This other thing, and I mentioned this to my wife while I was there, and I'm just looking. I'm being observant. I'm
Okay.
trying.
All right.
I'm like, I got my own little
You're Tucker
ways of
Carlson. You're
journalism.
just asking
Yeah,
questions. You're just
I'm just
asking
asking.
questions.
Just asking
Yeah.
questions. I'm looking around, and you see all the moms. The moms are very enthusiastic. They've got everything together. They know what's going on. They got the
That's right.
schedule, whatever. And then next to them, not at the first day, but like by the end of the second day, there are men next to them totally defeated. Like they have no more stamina left. You can't so
Yes.
it's just that
The
the
moms definitely know how to
moms have
pace
way more,
themselves.
and I guess this goes for everything in life, but moms have way more stamina than the
Oh,
dads do.
well,
The dads were just like,
that's a
"Oh my
proven
God,
fact. Yeah, for sure.
get me out of here."
Definitely. When it comes to marathons or doing things for a long time, moms are, I mean, they're like superheroes. I mean, it's incredible. Right.
Really
And men, we not to put too fine a point on it, we're good for a very short time.
very short period of time. Very short. Like we're like to start day one, we're all in.
Yeah.
Like it's like I'm ready to go. Second day, I don't know about this.
What's
I need the whistle banning earphones. I can't hear those whistles anymore. But
it's
there we go.
It's the Toby Keith song. I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm good once as I ever was.
Great line.
Yeah.
All right.
That's a great song.
Next, what do we got?
Next story up here is about Instagram. Basically, there's a lot of reaction going on to the whole TikTok ban. And one of the reactions seems to be being reported in a number of outlets is that they are now throwing money at creators. The article that we'll link to here comes to us courtesy of Gizmodo. And basically, the headline is Instagram just throwing cash at Reels creators at this point. And the article opens up by saying, why would I ever use Instagram Reels, you might be wondering? Well, Instagram has a question of its own. Do you like money? Are you interested in being rich? Seeking to incentivize users to post more of the TikTok-like content that the platform is really, 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 really trying to make happen. Instagram is reportedly beefing up the bonuses it currently offers to creators who use Reels. Yet another symptom of the TikTokification of all things. Reels was launched in 2020 as Facebook's answer to the short-form video craze. Much like TikTok, Instagram users can post 15-second videos set to music on Reels with the option to repost and respond to other users' clips and a trove of editing tools at their disposal to make cutting and syncing videos maximally intuitive. In fact, the feature's interface is looking more and more and more similar to TikTok's with each passing day. It was reported on Friday that Reels had also added text-to-speech and voice effects that have become so ubiquitously associated with TikTok. The app's original voice actor filed suit against the platform, saying she'd never authorized the use of her recording in the thousands of viral videos they were used. That goes on to talk about how Zuckerberg has pledged to pay out $1 billion to creators. But on Friday, TechCrunch had reported anecdotal claims by some creators with smaller followings who have seen the payouts on offer multiply by a factor of 10 in the last month alone. One Instagram user with about 24,000 followers told the site that they were basically the ads making this page jump all ads. God dang it.
Well, it's I guess the point is that this is a issue that Instagram has been doing forever, and their whole thing is like they're not TikTok. How do they become TikTok besides Meta buying them? So you can go back and you can keep bringing up the same articles over and over again. But recently, because of what happened with TikTok, they're going after it again, and they're saying, "Hey, we'll give you 50,000." Some creators like, "We will give you $50,000 to say I want to dedicate my platform on Instagram." But you and I sent you a note.
From Simon Owens.
Simon Owens, which I love the take, which when is Instagram and Meta for that matter just going to go to a straight revenue cut like Spotify does?
Right.
And I think it's time. Like some of these creators, instead of just taking the money, and I know it's difficult because $50,000 is a lot of money to anybody, especially a creator that say, "Hey, we need those funds." Sure. But it would be great if there was some kind of formula that every other industry is taking on that you could say, hey, if you drive this amount of attention and this amount of revenue, you get this as your cut, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Instead of just throwing out, oh, $1 billion here, $1 billion, they're meaningless numbers. They don't, for what? Like, and how many people get it? And why $50,000? And who's getting that? Instead of just like going in and just make it merit based.
That's right.
And do it for real.
Or even tiered, right? Even tiered would be good, right? You know, where it's like there's an incentive to get more and more audience and more engagement, because once you reach a certain tier, then the you know, it's not a bad thing if those that are getting more engagement get a bigger cut than those that get less engagement. It's the question of what's, you know, just so that it's clear for everybody. I think it's what seems to be, from reading what you sent me over with Simon's email, as well as some of the other articles I've seen about some of the bigger creators, like concerned about this. Like some of them are like being quiet, like they're like, oh, I'll just take my extra dough, thank you very much.
Yeah.
But some of them are actually concerned, and they're saying there needs to be transparency, there needs to be visibility into this, so that people understand where what gets what, right, without it being sort of a, you know, it needs to, like you said, it needs to be a meritocracy.
And it's why, you know, even we're doing Content Entrepreneur Expo planning and agenda and trying to figure out, and the focus is, when we're looking at revenue, the focus is, how do you sell more directly?
Yeah.
And whatever you're selling sponsorships, you're doing brand deals, you're whatever. How can you take more of the responsibility and the control into your hands?
Yeah.
Instead of focus. So it's hard to say, hey, here's how you do a deal with TikTok, Instagram, and all the others, when it's a moving target. We don't know.
It's such a great point. And there's an article that we were going to cover on the show, but I'm sure we won't because of time. And this is a Wall Street, we'll put it in the show notes, from the Wall Street Journal, that talked about how Substack creators are now in so many ways selling advertising direct, right? They're turning into ad salespeople.
Yep.
And that's the model, right? Is where you turn into, you know, you build your own book of business, right? As a creator, and you start selling directly and making those deals directly, instead of relying solely on that's the whole problem with building your home on rented land, is the fact that you don't control either the business model, nor do you control your ability to even operate that business model.
Well, it's such an important point. When you talk about anybody getting into the creator economy space, anybody that wants to do this as a business, you have to make sure, it's very difficult, because you can fall into the trap of wanting the sales to go through someone else, wanting to get those affiliate sales through Amazon or whatever the case is. When you really have to say, if you do not control your sales channel, you don't have much of a business.
Right.
You don't know where it's going to go.
And by the way, it's literally the Darth Vader.
You want those relationships, because that's where the wonderful things can happen. That's when you can get purchased. That's where you can do long-term deals, and you can really get involved with a company that wants to be part of what you're doing as a content creator. So I would just say, anybody that's trying to say, don't worry about it, I can get all my ad revenue through YouTube or TikTok or whatever. Yeah, you can get some, but that should be considered ancillary.
Yeah.
Not your primary channel.
It's literally the Darth Vader, where the scene where he says, "You've changed the terms of the deal," and Darth Vader says, "Pray I don't change them again." Right? I mean, that's really what it is.
That's a great call to my favorite Star Wars moment. Okay. What else we got?
Let's get to our next story here, which is coming again courtesy of Meta, and maybe the reaction. It's certainly part of the overall trend here, what's going on geopolitically and all of that. This happened a couple of weeks ago, that we didn't get a chance to talk about it, but there is some new news coming out here, which is we're gonna link directly to the horse's mouth here and go right to the 1970s disco boy Mark Zuckerberg's video. I mean, have you seen him lately? I mean, he's got some fashion consultant working with him that's just like trying to earn their keep, and it's just interesting.
He might be, but he might be looking younger. He might actually be,
I don't think so. I will say this. when he had the beard going for a little bit there, and I thought he looked good. I thought he looked good with the beard. I think he looks good with the beard. The whole sort of, he's got the, the sort of the hip teenager alpaca cut, the sort of the, guys that look like alpacas now, where they got the curly hair on top and very long, and anyway, they all look.
But
like
that's a better look for him than the really tight curls. That I think this is. I don't have a problem. Plus,
I mean,
the guy is a black
90s,
belt. The guy's a black belt now.
Yeah.
He's buff. He's taken a page.
Oh, he's definitely in shape. He's definitely
sort of. He's following in Jeff Bezos's path.
Well, Bezos went full on MMA fighter, right? I mean, Bezos, shaved his head and basically became sort of like, went out and got a Hollywood bodybuilder sort of type to get him a movie body. But
let's just talk about that moment at the inauguration, by the way. I've never seen a collection of individuals like that, where you have the CEO from Google, Apple, Amazon, and Meta, all like 4 of the most popular people in the world. Like,
literally, there are the people in that one row represent $1 trillion worth of wealth, which is just
more than almost every other country in the world.
Correct. Just those 4 people, private citizens, represent more than $1 trillion of wealth. It's like, it's a little hard to get your head around, but anyway. Okay. Back to the story here. More speech and fewer mistakes. There's a video coming up. We're going to link right to Facebook and their sort of their website here. And they say basically Meta's platforms are built to be places where people can express themselves freely, and that can be messy. On platforms where billions of people can have a voice, all the good, bad, and ugly is on display, but that's free expression. And they go basically on and on to say that they're ending the fact-checking program. In other words, they're not going to try and fact-check anymore. They're going to let community notes, very much like what happened on X/Twitter, happen, so the community can basically check the facts. It has gone over about as well as you think it might with most people, saying that, it's just an awful, awful thing. I totally get why they're doing. I absolutely understand why they're doing this, because they don't want the regulatory, when this ultimately comes up, and it will come up. Yep. They don't want any impression that they're applying editorial standards to anything, right? And now they can say it. They can say, look, we don't apply, and we're just a platform, right? Just like the law from the 90s said that we can be. We're just a platform, and we let the community police itself. And it's a move in the wrong direction, and it's awful, and it's all the things. And it's, it is not going to get better. For marketers, the interesting thing to me is, for marketers, and what we can take away from this is, one, it's going to get a lot more toxic on social media, and brand safety, if you care at all about it, is going to be an interesting thing here. But more importantly, this is the news that's breaking this week, and this will link to the Wall Street Journal here, which is that paid ads, I'm assuming by paid ads they also mean paid boosted posts and stuff. The community notes thing won't apply. In other words, you can't apply community notes to an ad that basically makes some weird, weird or false or any kind of claim, right? Which is just, it's amazing to me that here we are. This is where we are in 2025, that I can basically say whatever I want, and as long as I pay for it, not even the community can tell me that I'm wrong.
This is the biggest tragedy that I think we've seen in the last 10 years. Is where there's not a there still is a premium on truth.
Oh,
but nobody knows what it is.
It's becoming more and more of a premium.
But nobody knows what it is.
Right.
And by the way, totally different subject. We've talked about this for the last couple months. AI engines are not helping this, because they're making up stuff too.
That's right.
So this is, I think that because of all this happening, there is a premium put on a brand or a creator who can build that trust on a regular basis and actually be trusted. You don't have to be right all the time, as long as they know that whatever you're saying is comes from the heart, that you believe it when you say it. You always come back. Like you and I, we've made many mistakes. We come back on and we'll say, well, we made a mistake. That was wrong. Like basically every one of our NFL predictions was wrong. And we're sorry about that because we're terrible.
But there's one thing about being wrong, and then there's one thing about being then lying about something that's already happened.
Well, that's the thing.
You know what I mean?
Like people know we don't lie,
right?
But we're wrong sometimes.
We're wrong a lot. Yeah,
we do the work, but that's where there's a premium right now. So that's where, like, if I'm a marketing department, I'm really putting more of my energy around figuring out how we can be the trusted expert when everything else out there we don't know
is not. That's
so
right.
There's a huge opportunity there,
a huge branding opportunity. I mean, we've talked about this since 2014, where you and I used to stand in front of audiences at our masterclass and talk about the fact that becoming the trusted source of interesting things was not just an opportunity for marketers, it was a responsibility of marketers.
Yeah.
And the opportunity continues since for 10 years, the opportunity has just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger because everything, and this includes, by the way, and it'll start with my rant on mainstream media, when we get to it in the Rants and Raves section. But the idea here is that everything is suffering because of this. It's not just Facebook and Meta properties, nor is it just Twitter, nor is it TikTok. And by the way, quick little side note here. I think going back to your earlier sort of prognostication about Meta being one of the optional buyers here for TikTok, this would play right into that, right? This would them being able to go, hey, jazz hands, we're not doing anything with algorithms anymore. It's all the community, nothing, is blah, 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 blah. So you can trust us to take over TikTok, the US, because we're going to be the trusted source here, because, China, they're doing all sorts of bad things with their algorithm, but we're all transparent here. It's all free speech. So there may be something playing there as well. But ultimately, all of it is, there's the phrase, a rising tide raises all boats, but a shrinking tide also shrinks all the boats. And so you got to figure out how to build something that's going to, rise above all of this tide.
Yeah. What is it? When everyone zigs, you zag, or when zags, you zig, whatever that is.
Yeah, I get it.
That's the opportunity right now. When you have the largest media companies in the world saying,
yeah, man,
or it's not
man,
is
truth,
it?
Man,
is it? How important is it?
Is it?
Is it? Yeah.
Anyway, let's get to our winners and losers. Somebody from the last week who was a winner in marketing, or somebody last week who was a loser in marketing. I've got a really quick one. Do you want to go first, or shall I go first?
So mine's really quick. This is from a week ago. This is Prof G Markets podcast, and their guest was Andrew Ross Sorkin. You might know the name from CNBC. So he's been on the CNBC Squawk Box morning show forever, and I started watching him there. He also has produced a number of television shows, and great book, Too Big to Fail. Couple of and what's the pitch book? Anyways, he runs another couple companies in there. He does everything.
Yeah,
but they asked him on this show about the future of media, and he said he was very optimistic about the future of media, but he said the model is becoming media as collectors of people. And I just thought that the way that he said that, collectors of people, you and I have talked about how if you're a marketer today and you want to build out a content marketing department, you might want to look at building up your employees and having your internal influencers. In the same manner, Andrew was talking about media companies are not just going to be this big brand. He said everybody is going to look at the byline.
Yeah.
Whether that byline is on a social media channel or an email newsletter. So I think that's kind of where we're heading. You're collecting the smartest people in your industry, and that is the future of media. We've already seen it. The greatest example of this that I've seen, and you could see it happen over the last 15 years when New York Times started all their newsletters, email newsletters, where they started their email newsletters, they called it something, news of the week or whatever it is, and it was a logo for that newsletter. Every newsletter had its own logo. Go to that newsletter page now. Almost all of them are people.
Yep.
It's either one or two people, and you're seeing media companies do this. And I
even
think
if it's written by multiple people, it's sourced to one person or two people.
that's right.
Yeah.
You're putting your power behind an individual. That's where the trust opportunity is. And so you're going to see that in media companies. You're going to see it in content marketing divisions. You're going to see creative groups do that. There's the opportunity.
Exactly.
And so I just thought that was interesting, the way you said collectors of people. So
yeah,
there you go.
That's right. It's a absolutely important. I've been talking to all my clients about this, right? Which is, when you think about your content marketing, if your email newsletter comes from admin, or it comes from the team at company, or your blog posts are signed by, the company name or admin or info at, no more. Like, you're doing it wrong. You've got to start to surface the individuals in your company, whether or not it's the CEO, executive leadership, practitioners in the business, your head of whoever it is. Find that person and make them the author of it, because it's incredibly important to surface the people in your in your organization.
That is it. All right, what do you got?
I got a really quick one here, which is, if any fans of this show know that I'm, from a content marketing perspective, I have been a super fan, a fanboy of what Edelman has done with the Trust Barometer for, I don't know, it was 15 years they've been doing it now. It's a long time. And every single year, it's one of those things. Remember back in the day where you used to talk about this idea of the consistency of when you publish it, and they always publish it in January. The consistency of when you publish things makes people, you're trying to create that must-see TV, right? That idea of anticipation for you want, and they have created that with me, and I await it every year. And they just launched it at Davos, I think. Edelman did, and basically launched the 2025 version is out. I'm just starting to dig into it, but I just wanted to say it's yet again an indicator of an amazing content marketing program for that organization that is truly a valuable research study that they do every single year. And I quote it every year. 10 of my presentations will quote the Trust Barometer. It's just an amazing piece of work, and just huge hats off to that team for continuing to do it, and for Edelman for having the guts to continue to do it year after year after year after year.
And it gets bigger every year.
It gets bigger, and it gets, I think, and arguably it gets more important every year, because what they're being able to do now is go back, and look at so much of the year over year changes that you can just see trends now. And it's just incredible. Yeah.
When I was in Italy, I used some of those trust charts talking about how brands are more trusted than governmental entities or news. And it's just like, everybody's like, you're kidding. I'm like, this is the greatest opportunity that brands have ever had. And look at it.
Yes.
They're telling you.
And what's so amazing is that they always come up with the one of the things that I applaud their, I don't know who does this. I don't have any insight into who does it or how they do it, but every year they have a big headline, like the title of is a different title. And this year's title is "The Crisis of Grievance Puts a Pressure." The Crisis of Grievance. Oh, such a great title. As a word guy, I just went, man, that is just good stuff. The Crisis of Grievance.
Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent.
All right. Well, let's get to our rants and raves quickly here before we run out of time. And this is where Joe and I go off on a little bit of a rant or a little bit of a rave over something in marketing and media that has gotten us all up in a tussy, or something that makes us feel like we want to go invade Greenland. That's quite honestly.
God, poor Greenland.
Oh my God.
And poor Canada, by the way.
Did you see the reporter that went up there? It was from one of the very, very highly conservative news media outlets, like Newsmax or somebody, who they sent a reporter up to interview people on the street about how they felt about America coming in and taking over Greenland. Basically, it just didn't go the way they were hoping it would go. Basically, everybody on the street in Greenland was like, "What are you, crazy? You're a mess. The U.S. is a mess. We don't need that here. We don't want any of that here. We're very happy. Get out of our country." Basically,
I know. Well, I see the same thing. I saw an interview the other day. I was watching Squawk Box, and they interviewed an analyst from Canada, and they introduced him as hailing from the 51st state of the Union, Canada. Good. And the guy said, actually, he says he's hard to even talk about anymore and defend. Like, what are you going to say about, annexing Canada? But he did say something that's interesting. I didn't know this. He said that if you were to put Canada and the economy of Canada up against, like, per capita, how much each person makes, it would be one of the worst states economically.
Well, yeah, this is clearly haven't thought this through, right? If you were to annex Canada, and let's say you made each of the provinces a state, right? So you added the 4 new states, or even if you just made it one giant state, right? It doesn't matter. A Republican would never be elected again. I mean, it would be the electoral math on that would be so out of whack that it would be crazy for them to do that, because you would never have a conservative government again. I mean, it would basically be because
it would be one state.
Yeah, I mean, one. That's a big state.
Hey, you know what? We're all falling into the playbook, because the president says, "Look over here, I'm going to say this crazy thing here," and while I'm doing that, we got mass deportations going on.
That's right. Just saying. As I've been telling all my friends, my family, anybody sort of where I said, you just have to stop being triggered by this. You just have to stop being upset by what they say. Don't listen anymore. Like, when they say stuff, go, okay, fine. Right. Yeah. I mean, I heard today, he said that basically they're going to stop. He's going to delete the FEMA. He's going to delete the entire FEMA. I'm like, okay, good. Do it. Go do it. I double dog dare you. Right. Yeah. Go do it. So I'm stopped listening to what they say and watching what they do.
Yeah, that's all you could do.
All right. Anyway, you want to go first on this?
So I watched this 36-minute video by Wall Street Journal of Anthropic CEO. Let me get the name right. Dario Amodei. Does that sound right?
That's it. Dario. Yep.
By the way, incredibly intelligent person.
Oh, he's a.
By the way, if you don't know, Anthropic is one of the leading AI frontier models that are out there. You might know it by Claude.
Yep.
So Claude 3.5, I think, is the latest one that's out there.
Yep.
And I don't usually get into interviews like this. I usually get bored really quickly. I did not in this one. I think that what this gentleman. So, anyways, I'll put it in the show notes. If you're into this stuff and you want to know where the future's going, and as it pertains to marketing, especially, you're going to want to pay attention to this. But at the 20-minute mark, I just jotted down some notes that I want to share with you. So basically, Dario says AI systems are better than by 2027 or 2028. AI systems will be better than humans at literally everything. So what he was talking about is when that happens.
I don't know that I agree with that statement, but fine. Keep going.
The only reason why I don't is this guy doesn't exaggerate. He's not he's very careful. And he says, I'm very careful because I don't want to be put on the hook for these things. But I'm very confident in what I'm seeing, that in most things, AI systems will be better. And really what he goes on to say is, and this is not anything more than, I think, just something to think about. He goes on and says, at that point, when labor is not the driving force of most human beings, it's not the work that we do, because that's not what's going to happen. The work that we do, that we're doing right now, is going to be done by other things. We are going to have to focus on having a really incredible, meaningful conversation with each other on what we're going to do about it. Because he says it is coming. Now, you could say that it might not be in 2027. You might say it might be in 2030. It might be in 2035. But it absolutely is coming. And he said even in robotics. He says we're getting a point. I was at the other day at a place in Cleveland. Their fries were done by a robotic arm.
Yeah.
So it's just a small thing. Well, pretty soon, everything back there is going to be done by a robotic arm. All these jobs are being taken over. The point is that instead of 90% of our worth being put into the work we do. And 10% is our family and other things or whatever we spend time on. We're going to have to switch that. We're going to have to move to figure out what's the most meaningful and what's the most important things that we can do, because work might not necessarily define us as much as it does.
So the philosophy of that, I don't disagree with, but I think one of the things that we have to keep in mind with all of that is when we speak of capability, we're not speaking of implementation. In other words, and I'll put it very simply, let's use self-driving cars as an example here. Sure. The capability for self-driving cars to be better than any human at driving is not that far away, I suspect. And so the fact that the AI and that the robotic elements of what a self-driving car is probably not that far away to make the claim that the capability is better than, now how from that point forward, how long does it take before we actually do that thing, right? Actually where we're not driving anymore. And the answer to that is an exceedingly long time for all of the innovations that have taken place over the years. And so when I think of something like, okay, surgery, for example, we might be capable in the next 3 years of an AI plus a robot to be better than any surgeon on the planet. I put some doubt around that, but let's just say that I believe him and that capability will exist. So if that's in 2028, how many years later before we have all surgeons replaced with robots and AI? A long time, because all that has to get built. All that has to get built and tested and rolled out and all that kind of stuff. So the capability versus the reality of it is something we always have to keep in mind when these big visionary forecasts come out. So, however, the other thing can be true at the same time, which is we do need to start having that very meaningful conversation. So I don't disagree with him at all about the need to have a meaningful conversation about it, like today.
I don't disagree with you for a lot of things, because like with self-driving cars and with surgeries, there's many, many more contributing factors involved than just the surgery itself or just the driving itself. The point is, let's just take Meta. We talked a lot about Meta. Zuckerberg on the Joe Rogan show last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, he said that by the middle of this year, he will have mid-level engineers replaced with mid-level AI representations, agents. It's already happening.
But that's I
heard that's one area that it's easily replaceable. You know what else is easily?
I saw that as well. And I also saw there was another one where I can't remember which company CEO it was, where basically saying, it was Salesforce, it was Benioff. Benioff was on an interview and said something very similar, where he said, my IT guys came to me and said, they don't need any new headcount this year because they're, and it's like, okay, all right. We need to have a pretty healthy eye of skepticism about why Mark would say that and why Benioff would say that based on and what the reality of that is. That's not necessarily a good decision. I'm just going to put it.
I'm not saying that it is. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying it's even Dario says on this, he says the better companies will be the ones that don't decrease headcount.
Right.
That work with the AI.
I'm behind
he
that.
says 100%. There's no doubt about it. He says the data tells us that, but that's not what's necessarily going to happen. Some companies are going to be thoughtful about it. Some aren't.
Right.
So Meta right off the bat says we're getting rid of people and we're replacing them with AI agents. It's happening. Done deal.
Which makes perfect sense coming from Zuckerberg, who is an Android himself. I mean,
there you go. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So my whole take on this is moving way faster than I thought it was going to.
I think it's not moving any faster than it should, and that you thought. I think what you're getting now is a lot of. I mean, we've lived through this, right? We lived through this with the internet, where when the internet came around and you had CEOs talking about how the quality of flying cars and and internet connected this and internet connected that, and we would all have flying cars by 2007. And I mean, there's the hype around, and I get why CEOs do this. Like they have to hype it up to keep everybody wound up around investing in it. And by the way, OpenAI just literally announced a $500 billion new investment into what they're calling Stargate, which is some AI
group
sort of
so yeah, Benioff is a part of that with sale.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of people part of that.
Exactly.
Except for I don't think Elon's a part of that.
That's right.
He called it something else, Star Blank, whatever he called it.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, but so it's the amount of thrash and noise is going to be high, and I just my only encouragement for all of us is to go, okay, let's take a minute. Let's just take a minute and think that through, because and having the meaningful conversation is really my favorite part of what he said there. It's like, yes, let's definitely have those meaningful conversations, which aren't happening right now because so many people are worried about the speed of getting left behind that they're not having the valuable conversation. They're literally going, and by the way, this is exactly why we're in the mix we are with social media right now. Nobody ever stopped in the early days of social media and went, I wonder if this is good for our kids. Let's talk and let's have a talk about this, right? We just went, it's moving so fast. It's social media. It must be good. The CEOs are telling us it's amazing, right? And so we need to basically take control of our own agency in our lives.
I totally agree with you. I don't think the majority of humanity is ready.
No,
that's the point I'm trying to make.
I agree with all of that.
Let's get ready. Let's get ready sooner than later.
Let's get ready to rumble.
Let's get okay. What do you got?
All right, very quickly here. I just wanted to, first of all, I wanted to thank everybody in the audience. I had so many, and I actually in a Facebook and LinkedIn post, I actually did a little bit of a mea culpa and apologize because so many of you reached out to me via DMs, via text, via email, on all the social platforms, and it was just a little hard to keep up during what was all going on. So if there's anybody out there that sent me a note and I didn't get back to you, or I got back to you in a half-assed way during the fires, my apologies. It was a lot. And so, and I didn't want to do like a template, sort of, cut and paste paragraph of,
Sure.
we're doing fine and this is the thing and blah, blah, blah. So there's all that. But so thank you all for your wonderful words of encouragement and caring and love and light and prayers and all that stuff. Having said that, let me talk about very quickly the media coverage and the marketing stuff. I also got during the fires, and I'm not joking here, DMs from companies, basically mostly startups. So I got one in particular, and this sort of is representative of all of them, from a CEO of a technology company of fire prevention, who literally said to me, "These fires are horrible and it's awful, and I hope you're doing safe in this time. We have a fire prevention system which could help you and your business really make sure that you're fire protected." Oh, and wow. It took everything I had not to sort of throw this guy under a bus. And basically it was just whoever gave them the advice that this was the time, like it's literally your house is on fire and you have a sales guy coming around and saying you should buy fire extinguishers.
That's
and so
fire insurance.
It's like it was awful. Some of the marketing was just absolutely awful. Couple that with the media coverage. And I have a very specific example of this, but basically one of the biggest challenges we had during all the hullabaloo that was going on was we're watching TV, right? And when we watch TV here, we're watching the local news, right? And I mean local news, right? So it's stuff that's like local news coverage, not associated with a big network at all. And it was great. These people they're locals. They understand the neighborhood. They understand what's going on. They're giving you the real scoop. They're, some of them are a little better at it than others. Others are a little dramatic and a little, brought themselves a little too much into the story. Like, oh, I remember when I had a dog, I mean, there's some of that. There was some of that, but it was very minimal. Compare that to the national news, which was what everybody in my family that is outside of LA, my friends, that's what they were getting, right? Which was so much of the just awful clickbaity, high drama, who did what the blame was, where basically whose fault it is, the fact that they didn't have they had water in the Palisades, but there was so much of that awfulness and just inaccurate and just so clickbaity that it was really, I think, an indictment of where national mainstream, and I mostly mean here the CNNs, the CBSs, the NBCs, the big national news networks are right now, Fox, all of them were just absolutely pitiful at the reporting on this, except where they brought in some of the local reporting, right? When they brought in the local reporting, it was fine. But for us locals here, it was amazing to watch the difference. And the specific example I'll give you is on social media, there was a thing going around literally yesterday. It came from CBS News, and it was a map and the headline on the map, and it was a Facebook post. I saw it on TikTok. I saw it on Instagram, and it was basically a big image from CBS News that said 3 major fires raging in Los Angeles, and it showed the Palisades fire, basically the what they call the Hearst fire, which is up near Altadena, and then the Hearst fire, which is a new fire, and then of course the Pasadena Altadena fire. Both of those, by the way, the Pasadena fire and the Altadena fire, are out for the Altadena fire is 91% contained, and the Palisades fire is, by all intents and purposes, out. I mean, it's just they're sifting through the they're making sure there's no hotspots and stuff, but it's been out for a week and a half. The Hearst fire was new. The Hearst fire was brand new as of yesterday. But the way that you looked at the map, like I looked at it and went, oh, my house is on fire right now, because the way that they had the Hearst, they had one of the fires was the graphic was so inaccurate. It basically looked like flames were everywhere, and it was very dramatic and basically, and with no context. Basically, it was 3 major fires raging in Los Angeles as the headline. No other context other than, we're continuing to follow this dramatic story as 3 major fires rage through Los Angeles. It's like, if you were outside the area or outside the country, you would think the whole city is on fire. And that's the level of reporting that we're getting from the national news media. And I think it's just indicative of where national mainstream media is right now.
Well, kudos to the local reporters.
Oh, man.
Doing their job.
And it's such an important, I don't know how many times you and I have ranted and raved about the need and importance of local news and local journalism and local media, and why brands haven't latched onto this. And this is such the business case for it. This is such the business case for a brand coming in and taking a major step in putting themselves out there to have a local news organization and be able to fund it properly and be able to look at that, because there was never any more important business case for local media than it was those 2 weeks.
I would like to see, and the Kaufman Foundation did a lot of this with nonprofit reporting. I'd like to see somebody as big as the Gates Foundation, somebody really, really well funded, maybe comes in and says, "This is what we're going to do. Yeah. We're going to help support. We're going to fill these news deserts." By the way, there's lots of great. Even in this area, there's a lot in Cleveland. There's a lot of different nonprofit reporting going on in certain areas, but they're not well funded enough.
Yeah.
So to your point, brands, foundations, there's such a great opportunity there. We need
100%.
it. Fill those news deserts.
100%.
All right.
Good show.
We only went 20 minutes over.
That's right.
That's not so bad.
We had a lot to talk about. We had a lot to catch up on. So they'll forgive us. The audience will forgive us. For sure.
We had to catch up. What do you got going on?
I'm busy. I'm blessed and very, very blessed, I will say, to start this year very busy with client work. So I'm truly grateful for that. So I'm working hard. Got some white papers to write. I got some client deliverables to do. We're kicking the year off in style. I got a little behind because of the last 2 weeks, so I'm a little behind on sort of my homework assignments as they are. But other than that, it's I have to say it's a very nice start. It's like, in other words, that part of my life is great right now. So I'm prether happy.
Other than your house is on fire, but everything else is wonderful.
Yeah.
How
about you?
Well, in a couple weeks, I'm going to head down south and get out of this single-digit temperature.
There you go. It's cold, yeah.
Hell freezing over thing that we've got going on. It's been a very, very cold winter here in Northeast Ohio. Not as like not huge amounts of snow, but really, really cold, like a lot of the United States right now. But it doesn't seem to be letting up. I have to get out. I'm planning on going south here in the next couple of weeks, so I'm looking forward to that.
Very nice. I like.
But we'll still do our podcast, but I'll be doing it with palm trees behind me.
I love it. I absolutely love it. When I was in Mexico, which is where I was last weekend, and I honestly didn't want to come back. I was like, tacos, tequila, the beach. It's warm. It's lovely. I do not blame you. We did a couple weeks ago. We did a cruise to Mexico. The weather was perfect. Oh my God!
And we were getting ready the day before they announced on the loudspeaker, like, anybody that wants to continue your trip for another week, come see us. And I go to my wife and I'm like, we gotta go do this. Let's just stay.
Yeah.
Let's just keep going. She's like, no, we got stuff to do. And we got back here and it's 2 degrees. And I said, this is your fault.
Right, there you go.
I could be in 80 degrees.
That's
no,
right. You could be.
I'm not. It's cold. I'm cold. I don't like it. It's your fault.
All right. Well, there you go. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for catching up with us. I'm sorry for going over a little bit, but Chucklehead's going to chucklehead. That's what we're going to do. So, and we will see you again next week with a regular news program. And thank you so very much for tuning in. And once again, thank you for all your thoughts and prayers for sending me those notes during the last couple of weeks. It's been it was very lovely. So thank you for all that. And until we see you again next week, just remember, everybody, it is your story to tell. You tell it well. We'll see you next week on This Old Marketing. Hey, thanks a lot for making it this far in this week's episode, and thank you all for being a part of This Old Marketing. You can check out all the show notes of what we talked about today at thisoldmarketing.com, and it's also where you can leave us a review or a voicemail. We need those reviews and comments on whichever platform you follow us on. And if you haven't followed the podcast, please go do that and make sure you catch the latest and greatest episodes every Friday morning. We're on Apple and Spotify and all your other favorite podcatchers, of course, but we'd love it if you went over and subscribed to us on YouTube. That's right, YouTube. youtube.com/@thisoldmarketing. We'll see you again next week, folks, with another episode of This Old Marketing.